How can I make a living doing what I'm really passionate about? Wow, I bet I'm not the first person to ask that question. There's an old adage, isn't there? Find something you love doing and you'll never work a day in your life. But society is structured in a way that reward is not always commensurate with effort, and we're just all different. We vary so greatly by design, but some of us really feel like we just don't fit in the mold, and often that's because we're the ones that are going to influence the most change. Again, there's the story of the ugly duckling. But that's little comfort when you're basically seeming the butt of everyone's jokes, or the only one that doesn't fit in. So it's very real, the challenge, and I think often it's a necessary part, a rites of passage in a sense, to be ostracised from certain environments if you're going to affect great change, turn things on its head. So you have my sympathy, but I don't have a quick fix. But what I do have is 20 years or more experience of working to try to change things in a way that I feel is for the better. And throughout that time, I would say I followed my passion. And my passion has changed over time as I've grown older and evolved. But I started a journey in engineering when I was leaving school. I always felt I wanted to be an inventor. It seems quite a simple thing as a child, doesn't it, as things do. I make stuff, invent things, and that's all I have to do. But if you read James Dyson's story, you'll understand it's not a simple as that. As he said, there's a bit of a British tradition of people thinking if only I'd invented the cat's eye or the paperclip. But quite often the best inventions never see the light of day and are quashed by poorer systems, or because they're more commercially viable. I see that in the medtech sector. I think that commerce is such a driver of decisions over what's offered to a patient that at times it's quite depressing. But we have to navigate through that process and be wise in our choices, so we may be able to see the world as a better place once we have brought our offering to it. But in the meantime, we've got to get there. And for me, that's where the real tough bit has been. As I so often talk to other people with good ideas and say, it's not the idea. I agree, your idea is brilliant. It's the execution. Sometimes it feels like the execution of the person that invents the new. It's a hard road, you know. But I think from a human perspective, it gives you new skills, it gives you new perspective, it gives you tenacity and fortitude and empathy, and I'm a great believer that if you don't start down a road towards something, you may never see the opportunity that's there for you further down that road that doesn't go to where you thought Successville was. And even when you do arrive at Successville or wherever you've been pointing your intent, you still bring yourself. I like Jim Carrey's point of he wished everybody in the world could have everything they've ever wanted to realise that it doesn't mean anything. And that for me is why spirituality is something that scratches that itch of being. We're beings, not doings. So trappings are wonderful. It's great to have security. But again, security is a perception. Most of us live in a kind of hypnotized state of not noticing the really important things in life, whilst struggling so hard and all, often even prepared to sacrifice those important things like health and relationships just to get us to the next place where we think, well, then I can breathe easy and be who I am and everything will pan out. Well, again, that's where I bump up against the spiritual. I think if you watch a lot of near-death experiences, as I have, or been through something like it, and then you appreciate there's some purpose to all of this, some plan, and so often you see that people's lives changed because of just one incident, and it's often taken them from a place of familiarity which they didn't want to leave and felt that they'd arrived, they were in a good place, and dumped them in somewhere completely different that's forced them to evolve and change, and hopefully for the positive. I think one thing that's fairly universal in near-death experiences is that people that come back from that experience generally want to help. They want to make the world a better place. And I've seen a few near-death experiences where people talk about the ripple effect. They've seen the purpose of their life, or they've seen how things in their lives have affected others. And I find it really heartening that one lady was explaining that she saw how anything she'd done which was negative to another person, that had a knock-on effect. You know, we've all done it, haven't we? Well, maybe some of you haven't, but I suspect you have. Got angry with somebody. Oh, get out of the way, I'm trying to get to work. My boss will lambast me if I'm late again, and it's not my fault and I'm angry. Just get out of the way and hurry up. Then that person feels hurried, and so the chain goes on. But she said what really helped her and lifted her and changed her perspective was that positive acts also ripple on. And she saw that they ripple far farther than the negative, which seems kind of counterintuitive to the world we live in a way, doesn't it? I mean, we're all under pressures that force us to do things that we don't want to do, and it seems that they are the ruling law, if you like, of the world we live in. The physics But in actual fact, it's the little acts of kindness and love that really ripple far farther than we can imagine. So back to passion. How do you make a living from your passion? Well, why you're not already passionate about what you're doing is one perspective on it. And if anybody watching this has heard of Michael Singer, he has a very disciplined but excellent philosophy on spirituality and self that, as is often taught by mystics, or he calls himself a yogi, that our role in this world is something we can always be passionate about, no matter how it may be viewed by the rest of the world. And I think the great thing about Michael Singer is he has such a level of success that he was entrepreneurial. Despite living in the woods, he built a business and sold it for something like 3 billion, I think, floated it in the US stock market. And it was software for managing medical records, used by a quarter of all physicians in the US at one point. So it's easy to attribute purpose and value to that work, and he calls it his dharma because that's his spiritual belief system, something that he was doing to fulfill his own potential and make the world better. I'm putting words in his mouth, but we're all doing that to some degree, I think, and regardless of what that status may carry in terms of society or monetary, that's a path that's open to us all. But there's some real duality in the Western world in which I've grown up in, and there certainly are jobs which feel unfulfilling or meaningless, but they put the food on the table, they pay the bills, and in some sense we relate to them, but maybe we don't relate to them anymore, and our passions have changed. And for me, entrepreneurship was my absolute focus in my late 30s through to my 50s, early 50s probably. But spirituality's always been there as well, but my passion was to do something different, entrepreneurial. And now I've changed through that process, and that's great because it's given me so much insight and experience and tools to bring to bear on other aspects of my life. So I find that life is it's not like a cash machine or you just pull a lever and the money chunks out. And it's not meant to be, because you're not going to grow like that. But if you can be passionate about your own growth, then what you do in a way becomes less important. And if you can let go of a lot of defining, confining self-beliefs, ideas about who you are. And so for me, I was an engineer for forever. And then entrepreneur business gets tacked on. And now I'm passionate about sharing my spirituality. But if you can let go of confines, so I have to let go of just being an engineer if I'm going to talk about spirituality more. And if you can let go of those more, then you can let your truest self So be careful with those terms because we're all true, aren't we? And as I've said in another short video, we're all perfect as we are. We're all a process, and that doesn't mean we're imperfect at any point. But if you can let go of who you are enough to let your inner light shine, then you will feel that passion more and display that passion more. And you'll be amazed how what you do changes as well. So thank you for sharing with me, and I'm sorry if I don't have a ABC roadmap, but I kind of do. It's just we're going in around the back door rather than blazing a path down the front. Work around society's restrictions by allowing your spiritual self to open doors that you didn't know were there. I hope that's helpful.